Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for Bublish's Lunch and Learn webinar series. Excited today to be talking about public relations for your book and your author brand. Break through the noise, leverage public relations to promote your book or books and your author brand. As always, you can ask us questions in the chat section over to the right where the controls are for GoToWebinar, I'm sorry. So if you have questions, we'll be stopping throughout the broadcast to answer them. So just stick them in there and we will get to them. Also, if you'd like to tweet about this session or ask questions through social media, you can do that by using the hashtag bookmarketing or hashtag Bublish. And I'm excited to introduce you to our speaker today after we go over what we're going to be talking about. So in today's webinar, we're going to be studying the components of a public relations plan, from the key messaging to media kits and everything in between, as well as tips to make your book and your author brand newsworthy. Always a pleasure to introduce Joy Capps, our Chief Marketing Officer, who has been in the business of public relations for 20 plus years. She is an award-winning, results-driven marketing communicator and a former international board member for the International Association of Business Communicators. Joy, thanks for doing this today and for bringing your wealth of knowledge to the Bublish author community. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kathy. Before we dive into how to break through the noise, let's look at the landscape for a moment. Here are a few interesting facts. Did you know that on YouTube, every minute, 3 days worth of content is uploaded? And Google has 359 million monthly active users. You'll find that 71% of online adults use Facebook and 63% of Facebook users visit daily, while 40% visit multiple times per day. There are 284 million active Twitter users each month, and 80% of them use mobile devices to tweet. The average Twitter user follows 5 or more businesses. So let me ask you something. As an author, you're a business. So how many followers do you have? The bottom line is there is a huge opportunity for you to leverage public relations. Because you see, about 71% of tweets are ignored and only 23% generate a reply. Only 20% of CMOs, Chief Marketing Officers, leverage social media networks to engage with customers, and only 39% of marketers promote content on social media that requires registration. Since many aren't taking advantage of this huge component of public relations, social media, then perhaps you should. You see, carpe diem, seize the day. That's my motto. So let's see what we can do about it. But before we do, let's look at the difference between marketing, public relations, and publicity. I get asked this a lot. Are they all the same thing? It's easy to see how the lines between each discipline can become blurred. Most people think they are fit together, but some people think that marketing is the end-all be-all and public relations and publicity are simply subsets to support it. But that's not actually true. Let's unpack this for just a second. You see, marketing and public relations are complementary rather than competing strategies. While publicity is just one tool used in the discipline of public relations, marketing works to sell the company's products and services, while PR strives to develop and maintain relationships and build reputation. You see, public relations and marketing are very closely related and are often used together. They are actually two distinct business functions. Public relations involves all forms of communication within and from the organization, while marketing is limited to outward messages, mostly for the purposes of selling. Marketing works on what is known as the 4 Ps: products, price, place, and promotion. PR, on the other hand, takes care of an organization's reputation, not just its products, and in the long run lends credibility to the marketing strategy. Public relations creates and maintains a mutual understanding between the company and its current and potential clients. In short, public relations is a long-term process, and its goal is to create and nurture relationships between an entity and its publics so that both benefit. Now, I mentioned publicity earlier. I don't want to forget about it. It is a short-term activity, and it's typically used to promote an event. It is not establishing a relationship. It's one-way communications, not two-way. So I hope this brings you a little clarity to the difference between the two disciplines and the one tactical component. Let's look at public relations for a second, though. Public relations is simple, cost-effective, and powerful. You see, it's simple because one call can earn media coverage. And it's cost-effective because you can reach thousands. And it's powerful because the right story with the right message can be memorable. Here are some key questions that you're going to want to think about. Similar to when you write a book, use that who, what, when, where, and how scenario. So for instance, who? Who should execute public relations? Yourself? Someone else? Can you afford someone else? What should be included in your efforts, in your plan? What outlets should you focus on? Traditional media, online media, social media? Excuse me.
I should tell everyone not to interrupt here, but that Joy has been battling a sickness for a while, so we had to give her little breaks for water. Are you doing okay, Joy?
Yes, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
No, perfectly fine. I hope you're feeling better.
Thank you. So when should this be accomplished? With your rough cut? After you're published? Should you plan what you're going to do? Where should you work on public relations? Just behind your computer? Everywhere? Just by yourself? With your readers too? And finally, how often should campaigns, key messages, and outreach occur? Can you determine what is best, and how much will this cost? So let's look at 8 information-packed components of book promotion. We're going to get to opportunity for questions in a minute, but I want to go through these next 3 slides. So let's talk about planning. If you heard my last webinar about marketing consistency, some of this may sound familiar. To be successful in marketing or public relations, you have to be consistent and you have to plan. By planning, I mean you have to set goals and timelines. Kay Dacus said it best. A goal without a timeline is like TNT without a detonator. It has a lot of potential power, but will never achieve much. So, what do? Well, start by asking yourself, what do you want to accomplish? How will you measure your success? What is your timeline for achieving each goal? And do you have a budget? Now, you don't need a budget, especially if you're going to do the lion's share of the work yourself. But it's always nice to have a little cushion that you can fall back on if you see an opportunity that you want to embrace, such as issuing a press release over a newswire or taking advantage of Bublish's social media platform to help you get the word out to your target audience. When you're planning, plan around your book release timeline. In fact, you'll want to begin your public relations campaign 6 months in advance of your book being released. Plan around conferences. You could perhaps attend in person or maybe be part of the noise by participating in social media around the conference to help promote your author brand and your books. Plan around blogger and journalist editorial calendars. You may or may not know this, but publications map out what they're going to cover over a year in advance. And if you check out their editorial calendars, you can find places that you can pitch your story and maybe they'll find a fit. So while you're planning, let's take a moment to list out options for your plan. Which media outlets and bloggers are you going to reach out to? Do you have them listed in a spreadsheet? Do you have their email, phone, and Twitter handle? Do you know their preferred method of contact? Some prefer phone over email, and that's an important thing to discover. Have you begun building a relationship with them? If not, I encourage you need to start before you want to use them as a resource or cover your book or author brand. It's just like dating. You have to stay in touch with meaningful conversation to make it work. So when you do pop that question, the answer will be yes. Study media outlets and blogs that are read, watched, or listened to by your readers and figure out what sort of articles and segments they run. Then you'll want to brainstorm article and segment ideas that you can contribute to as an expert resource. Of course, don't forget to keep your social network drumbeat going. You may think you don't have time, but Bublish makes it really easy for you to do this and so much more. But that's another story. Check out Bublish's homepage for information about a free 30-day trial to get you started if you haven't already. And you want to plan out campaigns that you'll do surrounding various trends, topics that may be relevant to your audience. Find as well as campaigns building up to the release of your book. In fact, you can use Bublish to help you share rough cuts of your book excerpts to help that process along. Build out a calendar of topics that you're going to blog about, and then write the blog. Post it and socially share the heck out of it. You could actually reach out to author friends to do reciprocal blogging. Email marketing campaigns to your target audience in another webinar in and of itself. But let me just say this. You need to plan them for them to be successful and not a waste of your time and energy. Now, I've already mentioned conferences, but here's a few other ideas that aren't listed. Consider sharing free samples. Run a competition. Host a launch party. Offer books for review. Launch a campaign. Raise money for charity. Celebrate a birthday. Celebrate a local charity. Tie into a current news story. Or simply share your passion. Before we move on, let me say this. You always want to be adding to your list of options. So keep that going, but find the ones that work well for you and plan them out so you do have a consistent drumbeat about your author brand and your books. Now, before we get more tactical, I want to touch base on how to write your goals when you plan. This may sound familiar to those of you who listen to my marketing consistency webinar, but let's go over it again. When you write out your goals, you need to write them smartly. You see, SMART is an acronym that helps you remember how to write your goals. You want to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Here are some examples that I put together to give you an idea. For example, write a new blog post every day for the entire month of April. Spend 1 hour writing and scheduling social posts every week. Or plan a campaign to tease and engage readers about my new book 3 months before I finish writing it. Setting goals will give you direction, energize you, provide you with challenge, and make you think outside the box. So before you do anything else, sit down, plan, and set SMART goals. Kathy, let's take a quick break for a few questions before we move on.
Absolutely. So have a question from Jenny. She says, do you have to do PR and marketing together, or can you just focus on one or the other?
That's a good question, Jenny. And I think when I was kind of talking about the difference between marketing and public relations and publicity, I touched on this. But what I suggest you do is, instead of trying to do everything at once, is to find one piece that you're really good at and get that going and then build on it. So you may pick out some public relations things that you can do and build a plan around that. And then you say, okay, let me add to this public relations plan by putting on my marketing hat and working on some marketing initiatives and putting a marketing plan together. And then you kind of switch back over and do public relations. I do recommend, if you're going to be a one-stop shop, that you kind of learn how to do both, but don't bite off more than you can chew and try and do it all at once. You want to be successful. So start small and work your way through the different approaches.
And kind of in a similar vein, but and we get this so much from authors, this sense of prioritizing. How would you suggest, this is from Kathy, hi Kathy DeSanto, how would you suggest we prioritize this process, and how do we choose outlets for our strategy? And then we're good to go again.
That's a loaded question, Kathy, but it's a good one. Kathy DeSanto and Kathy Mice. So, what I would recommend is similar to what I just kind of commented on, is you want to do what you're going to do well. So I would just brainstorm everything that you have that you think you're going to achieve, and then I would put numbers next to them and say, okay, this is the low-hanging fruit. This is what I think I can do well with, and work on those, and then move on to the next before you try and do it. In fact, I think I have some comment on that later on in the presentation as well. Did I answer that question,
Great.
Kathy?
Thank you for the answers.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So let's move on and let's talk about key messages. You see, every author needs to develop key messages. Having a set of key messages that are used consistently in public relations creates a synergistic brand and is important when you leverage public relations to promote your books and your author brand. Think in terms of what problems your book solves for readers, or think about, is there any theme in your book that you can help readers become sexier, richer, or healthier? Get a notepad and write down 3 messages that you want prospective readers to know about your book. They should be no more than 1 sentence. Think about maybe these 3 questions. Do your messages describe what you have to offer? Do your messages build up your author or book credibility? Does at least one of your messages clearly make an offer to the audience? Your key messages are part of your author brand, and you need to practice saying them until they automatically roll off your tongue. You repeat it over and over in every conversation about what you do, every interview, every event, even strangers that you talk to. In fact, if you determine your key messages about a book before you write it, you're going to have an easier time writing and connecting with people when you promote your book. What do you want that person to walk away understanding when they finished your book? If you draft your key messages first, I guarantee your chapters will be easier to write and your book will feel more like a conversation. And your audience will be able to connect better with what you're saying. Better still, you've done half the job for a great publicist to grab your book, create a brilliant marketing campaign to help you come up with a bestseller. So let's look at what a key message looks like. We're going to look at a couple of examples. Talia Stovall's nonfiction book, Lightbulb Moments, has the following key messages. Your passion can become your livelihood. Successful people often fail their way to success. Whatever you don't control controls you. And distinguish between your goals and your wishes or dreams. On the other hand, if we look at Harlan Coben's fiction book, The Stranger, which just came out and I can't wait to read, has these 3 key messages. A stranger whispers a few words in your ear and disappears, leaving you picking up the pieces of your shattered world. A well-placed lie can help you build a wonderful life. A secret has the same explosive power to destroy it. So you can see that how the different ones work here. Let's move on to something that's a little easier and fun. Talking taglines. Now, if I say to you, just do it, you probably think of Nike. If I say think differently, you probably think of Apple. And what about I'm loving it? Of course, you think of McDonald's. Well, as an author, you can maximize your public relations by having a talking tagline, something that you consistently use in all communications. It's a short catchphrase that highlights what you write, defines what makes you unique. And one of the things I'll tell you when you're developing this is you really need to come up with the options that you think are good, but before you use it, sit with it a while. Try it on for size. It's kind of like trying on clothes at the store. You want to make sure that it fits you before you finalize it and make that purchase. You want to also do the KISS principle. You know that one. Keep it simple, stupid. And I guarantee you, if you come up with the right talking tagline, that it'll give you immediate recognition for what you write, and it'll help people remember you. To figure out what talking tagline works best for you, I want you to do this. Take a piece of paper and divide it into 3 columns. On one column, the header, put product. Now, in your case, that would either be your author brand or maybe your book. And then the next one, I want you to put benefit. And the next column header, I want you to put purpose. List out everything you can about your product, your author brand, and books. And then list out everything you can about the benefits that your author brand provides and the purpose. Then pick one from each column and string it together to see if it works for you. Let's just take a quick look at some talking tagline examples. I'm not going to read them all to you, but some that jump out to me. Look at this one by Brandywine Collins, Seatbelt Suspense. Or how about this one by Jill Nelson, Endless Adventure, Timeless Truth. And then I really like Pat Ballard's romance novels with big, beautiful heroines. And Allie Cross, stories that transcend the ordinary. You'll notice that these talking headlines are concise and to the point, yet they tell you exactly what the author writes. Kathy, let's stop for a moment and take a question or two.
All right, we have a question from John. So do I need both key messages and a tagline, or can you just work on one or the other?
You know, John, that's a really good question. And I think that ideally, in a perfect world, you should have both. And in fact, we're going to look at some samples of things that people have done, and you'll get an idea how they've created multiple things here in just a little bit. But if you had to start with one, I think the easiest one to start with is probably your talking tagline.
Great answer. And then Rebecca asked, could you suggest a general fiction tagline?
Well, I could, but here's the deal. We'd have to kind of go through that exercise, the one where you take a piece of paper out and divide it into 3 columns, and then we need to list out all the different things about your author brand, your benefits, and your purpose. And those are going to be unique to you. So be happy to work with you on that, but I think that's something that you have to go through that exercise to really start to drill down and figure out the best answer.
Yes, absolutely. I think it depends on the book, it sounds like. And that's the whole key, right? That you're trying to find those differentiators.
Exactly.
Well, thanks. Those are great answers. That's all we have for right now.
Okay, great. So let's move on. What are the components of an author media kit, and what do you need? And why do you need one? Now we're going to spend a few moments on this slide while I kind of unpack each one. But let me set this up for a second. Let's say that you want to get media coverage to promote your book. Obviously, that's why you're on this webinar. You've done the press release thing and you've created a stir on Twitter, but your phone isn't ringing. What you don't know is that yesterday your website was visited by Sal, the literary reporter from a major New York newspaper. He came, he saw, and then he left. Why did this happen? Well, typically it's because you didn't make it easy for him. What you need is an author media kit. Now, the sole purpose of an author media kit is to sell you to the media and your readers and provide them with bite-sized nuggets of information for their journalistic endeavors. You want to hook them, right? So we'll go over these items and we'll even look at samples. But before we do, let me share this with you. You not only need a media kit, but you need to put it on your website. And most importantly, you need to keep it updated and have it ready to share via email and or as a handout when it's appropriate. So let's unpack this. An author bio is important. In fact, in the next slide, we're going to look at how to write one. Basically, you want to consider writing 2 bios, one short, about 3 sentences or so, and one longer, about a half a page. An author Q&A, well, that's pretty simple. Just think about questions that readers and reporters would want to know the answers about you, and do your own Q&A. Here's a couple of questions. Where'd you get the idea for this book? What made you decide to self-publish? Do you have another project in the works? If so, what is it? You get the idea? Then you want to make sure also that you list out your awards. List recent awards that you've won. It's important. Now, you don't want to list them all. Some people are multi-award winning, and that's awesome, but after a while it becomes braggadocious. But pick out the relevant ones that you've won and list them there. And if you haven't won any yet, consider checking out a Bublish partner, Chanticleer Book Reviews. They have continual contests that you can participate in and win awards for your work. Book summaries. Well, what you want is a summary of your book written in a news style without marketing hype. And that last part's pretty key. No marketing spin. Just put it out there. Tell it like it is. Book reviews. Well, you want to include a few relevant reviews for your book. And on your book covers, you need to include high resolution for print and low resolution for online. So in other words, downloadable book cover images that come in high and low resolution. The same thing would be with photos. We haven't gotten to that one yet, but you want to have a high and low resolution that they can download from online. And since I'm talking about photos, I'll go ahead and tell you, you want to include your caption beneath your photo listing your credentials or your author tagline. Let me go back up and tackle fact sheets. This is really key. If you can have a one-pager, a one-page document with pertinent facts about your industry or your book topic, that is something that you could easily leave behind or email to somebody that's interested in learning more about you. Now, there's a line item here for press releases. Let's talk about that for a second. Maybe you don't have any press releases, but maybe you do. If you do, include links to online versions that were written about you or your book. But if you don't, why don't you consider writing some? It's pretty easy to do. You're probably wondering, well, what do I include in a press release? Well, consider writing about things like, I don't know, key messages about your book. You want to include also a hook to engage the prospective reader. And consider tying your book or your press release, into news that's about a recent trend or news conference or whatever's been going on. Like, for instance, if you're a romance writer and there's the Romance Writers of America conference that happens every year, you might want to write a press release that kind of piggybacks on this groundswell, the noise that they're going to be creating around their conference. Or maybe it's a BEA, I don't know, whatever conference you might be interested in or would fit your specific genre. Consider including why someone would want to read your book in particular, and also where they can find a copy of your book. So I could keep going, but I think you've got the idea on press releases. The one thing I'll say before we move on is that the internet is full of free distribution websites that you can use to post your press release, such as onlineprnews.com or prlog.com. And what I would actually recommend is that you consider spending the $199 with PR Web, also known as Vocus, for a press release to go over the wire service when you've got a big lunch or announcement. And the other thing I'd tell you is whatever press release service you use, make sure that you stick with one service consistently. Hopping around from service to service is bad form, and it makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. Also, don't forget to include links to any interviews, articles, podcasts, blog posts that have been about your author brand or your books. And remember to prominently include your contact information. So let's take a quick look at what to include in an author bio. You can read the list there, just highlighting a couple of things. You want to keep it short, write in third person if you at all possible can, and don't waste words. Showcase your quirk and your character, and make sure that you create a short and a long version. You'll see Tina Folsom here, and this is actually a short bio of hers, and she has done quite well with packaging herself, as you can see. I'm not going to read that bio to you. I think you get the idea, and if you'd like to see it later, you can replay this webinar, or you can just Google her online and you'll find it. The other thing I wanted to talk about is her headshot. You'll notice that her headshot is really a good one. I've seen some that have just been horrible. They're not professionally done, and it's easy to tell the difference between a homemade picture and a professional one. So what I would recommend is that you take the time to get someone to shoot a couple professional photos of you. It shouldn't cost all that much. Or maybe you know a photographer friend and they'll do it for you on trade or for free. So I know I've gone through a lot of information quickly, but I want to pause for a moment before we get to our last slide and look at some good author media kits. Now, we're going to look at all three of these. I'm going to switch out screens here for just a minute. Let's see if I can do this. I've got it all teed up here for you. So if we look at Shayla, this is pretty interesting. You'll notice in just a short amount of space, there's a lot of packed information. You'll notice there's hyperlinks that take you to the various pieces of information that she has available. Now, let me say something. These three media kits that I'm about to kind of quickly go through, I spent a lot of time looking for them, and they were hard to find. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people have media kits, but it's content heavy. And in today's soundbite journalism, where we all just read very quickly, we scan, you need something like this that organizes it so that you can go and hone in on what you're interested in, because not everybody wants to see everything spelled out. So maybe I'm coming to her media kit and I just want to look at her bio. So there I would go. And you'll notice in her bio, she's also included several hyperlinks, and she's got a really nice professional headshot that's been done of her. If we go back, another interesting piece that you'll notice here is that you can download a press kit just about her book, In Search of a Rainbow. And then you can also download book covers. Remember I was saying high resolution, low resolution? Well, here you go. These are two different examples for each one. Now, I'm not going to pull them up because it would take some time to do that, and we need to move on. But I think you get the general idea. If we look at Laurel O'Donnell, what I like about her is she's actually got available a media kit just about her. But then if you come down here, you'll notice that she's created media kits for each one of the books that she's written, which is pretty exciting. Now, the other thing I will tell you, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under a bus, but you remember that I said that it's important to keep your media kit updated. If I were to click on one of these links right here, you'll find that it actually gives you an error message. So something's broken here. So when you do set this up on your website, make sure that you go back periodically and check the links that you created to make sure that they're still active and working. And before we jump back to the presentation, let's look here at Michael Hyatt. Michael wrote a book called Platform, and this is a media kit dedicated to that book. And similar but different than the others, he's listed out a table of contents so you can go directly to what you're looking for, even resources for fans, complete with Twitter and Facebook posts that you can include. That's pretty cool. And contact information, how to get things, product information, and then copy, blurbs, long and short. And it keeps going. So it's pretty interesting how he's done it. His long bio, his short bio, photos. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of that, but we'll jump back over here and finish up with our webinar. So before we wrap up, let's look at point number 8. Tips to make your book newsworthy. You see, being newsworthy is key here. What you think is newsworthy may not be what others think is newsworthy. You really need to unpack that and make sure that what you're sharing is relevant. For instance, I happen to be in love with a furry little boy. He's got 4 legs and a waggy tail. His name is Quigley. And I could write and send out press releases and news about him all day long if I wanted to. But at the end of the day, he's only important to me, maybe my husband, but nobody else really cares. So make sure that whatever it is you're sharing is going to be relevant to people. You want to monitor the news for those relevant ties. Write and issue press releases, as we've talked about before. Pitch to bloggers, radio reporters. Use your social networks. Pick a unique angle. Write exciting headlines. And make sure that you inform, don't promote. One of the biggest downfalls I see is that people try to sell. And really, people are looking for things that are interesting to them, not to be sold all the time. That's what pulls them in. Remember, building relationships. And then be sure to become an expert resource. Now, your head should be spinning with ideas by now, but don't try to do all of this at one time. Like I said earlier, pick the ideas that bubble to the surface and knock those out first, and then move on to the next ones. Remember, you can break through the noise and leverage PR for book promotion. You just need to plan smartly and execute well. Kathy, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, we do have a few more questions. And I know you anticipated this one because people always love examples. Eric is asking, could we have some more examples of strong author bios, both short and long?
Sure. Let me get out of this. I actually anticipated that.
Yes.
So
I know you're good about the examples.
a few pulled up here. Now, this happens to be one of my favorite authors, and she lives here in the low country of Charleston, which is where Bublish is based. Dorothea Benton Frank. You'll see this is her bio, and she actually, remember I said write it in third person? Well, she actually does it a little bit differently. What she does is she happens to write this. Actually, I'm sorry, this is written in third person. I got ahead of myself. But you can see that she actually includes hyperlinks throughout the way. And then why don't we look at Anne Rice? You know who she is, whether you read her books or not. And you can see that she has quite an extensive bio that kind of reviews what she's done over her career. And then here's another author that lives here in the Low Country. This is a short and sweet bio with Christine Nolfi, which if you haven't read her contemporary fiction books, I strongly encourage you to do so. She's really a good writer. But you can see that she's kind of laid it out, what she's all about, very succinctly. And she also did it in first person, which at the end of the day, third person is what's recommended, but I would say that first person's okay. And then lastly, what would the day be like without looking at Nicholas Sparks? I'm sorry, I digress. But you can see he's actually listed out every single book that he's written. If I was to critique this, I would say, well, maybe you want to include hyperlinks to these books, but I think he's doing well without my critiquing. So you can even watch some videos, and I see when you hover over certain words, it gives you hyperlinks, so that's pretty cool. But hopefully that gives you some good ideas. I would suggest that you Google some authors that you know and look up their bios and see what they have to say. What else do we have, Kathy?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, the other question you answered, it was about writing them in the first or third person, so you covered that well. So I think that is it for the questions. That was excellent information. Thank you so much, Joy, for sharing all your years of experience with us. And I just want to alert everybody to some upcoming webinars that we have. We try to do them every other Wednesday at noon Eastern time. Sometimes the calendar does not make that possible, but for the most part we do twice a month. And the next one is April 8th, and that is our standard tour of Bublish, where we show you how Bublish can really help you accelerate your book marketing success and build a dynamic author brand that will drive sales It's great for people who are either new to the platform or interested in exploring the platform to see if they'd like to participate in our free trial. So we encourage you to sign up for that. And then after that, on April 22nd, we have how book reviews can help you sell more books. Joy, you want to speak a little bit more to that one, because I know you've been speaking with our guest for that one.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. This is going to be put on by Kiffer Brown, and she is the founder and president of Chanticleer Book Reviews. I mentioned them earlier, and she really has this mapped out on how book reviews, which they happen to help you get, can help you sell more books. So I think it's going to be very educational, informative, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, great. And I think the other thing will be interesting to talk to her about the new role that really paid book reviews are playing in this very competitive marketplace. So it'll be interesting to get her take on that. So without further ado, thank you very much, everyone, for joining the webinar. We hope to see you on future webinars, and you can always contact us, Joy at Bublish. Joy is also Scuba Joy on Twitter. I'm Cat Mice on Twitter, or you can reach us at Bublish Me. And please visit our website to learn more about Bublish. And don't hesitate to email us at info@bublish if you have subjects you'd like us to cover in our Lunch and Learn webinar series. Thanks so much for being part of it today. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.